Welcome to Demond Does the 6 questions, where the same 6 questions can tell a unique story. I am your host, Demond, father of two, husband of one, and leader of this here Demodcast. Thank you if it's your first time, and thank you if it's your next time for joining us on Demond Does. Please remember to leave a 5-star review wherever you downloaded this show and leave a comment or two. It helps the show get seen and more people can join the conversation. My guest is from Charlotte, North Carolina. So I'm sure he's twisted his shirt up and spun it like a helicopter.
Absolutely.
He's also a connoisseur of all the nerd things, games, comics, and of course podcasting as the host of The Cut and the One Mic Black History podcast. Known by many as Countryboi, give it up for Michael Motley Jr.
Thanks for having me, man. That was dope. I felt like Michael Buffer, like I was about to start a fight.
That's what I'm talking about.
Yeah.
That is exactly the feeling I want. I want every guest I've had, if nothing else, I want them to feel like a big deal, that however long we end up talking today. If you don't feel like a big deal anywhere else in life, you are a big deal when you come on Demond Does, and I make sure that intro reflects that.
Yeah, that's dope. I like that a lot. That's really dope.
Well, thank you for taking time out to talk to a perfect stranger. How you doing?
I'm doing wonderful, man. It's a good day. I love, the whole interview podcasting space and getting to talk to new people. So this is dope for me.
Awesome. And it's cool for me too, because it's interesting to talk to people that I've listened to their podcasts and like listen to them before I even thought about inviting them. It's because It's weird to see your lips move and that voice that I hear in my earbuds come out. I was like, oh, that's what you look like, and that's how it works. It's I don't know why that's a weird thing to me, but it just, I don't know, it's just that weird connection.
I completely understand that. I feel that way about a lot of voice actors. When I see the guy from Bob's Burgers and talk in real life, and that's his real voice, it throws me off every single time. Like, you really talk like that?
Like every day?
Yeah, like every day you sound like that. The lady who plays Lisa on The Simpsons the same way. I'm like, that's your real voice? You sound like Lisa every day of your life?
Yeardley Smith, I believe is her name. She was on this is a long time ago. Most of the people are probably not going to even know this one, but she was on a show called Herman's Head that was on Fox. It was like,
ooh.
Do you remember that?
Yes, I do remember that show. I don't remember anything else but the name, though.
The show was about this guy named Herman. Every now and then you go into his brain, and then there were all these actors playing aspects of Herman. Like there's this guy named Lust. Yeardley Smith, who plays Lisa, was his sensitivity. And it was also pretty funny because Lust was the biggest of the actors, and Yeardley Smith was the smallest of the actors. So it was kind of funny how Lust is really big into men, and then and sensitivity is like with in our heads as well. Like it was a really cool thing. It was completely random, but yeah, she sounds like that. It reminds
like the Pixar movie, I forgot the name of it. They had a Pixar movie with that where they were like inside a person's head and it would show their emotions based on like little characters. I can't remember the name of it, but yes, there was a Pixar movie based on the same thing. It's probably something like Feelings or whatever. Somebody's listening to this right now, like it's this. Sorry, I forgot. I don't know, but it was a Pixar movie based off of that.
It's called Inside Out. I've got
Inside Out. There you go.
I got little people at home, so my youngest was. Oh gosh, she was probably 2 or 3 when that came out, so I've seen that movie a few times.
Yeah, lucky my little one, he's not there yet. Like the worst that I get is Coco Melon for like hours and hours and hours and hours and hours of Coco Melon. I'm sick of it.
I'm so sorry.
I'm sick. I sing the songs. I randomly go around singing the songs, Wheels on the Bus. Like, are you singing the Wheels on the Bus? Don't judge me. Don't.
That's when
Don't
you.
judge my life.
That's one of those parenting. What do you call them? Rites of passage. When my oldest was going through potty training, there was a song. There was a song that was sung on one of the things like "Go potty." Yeah.
Yeah.
And I did.
Yeah.
I'd
I can
randomly
see that.
sing that at work, and people were like, "Did you really just sing you were going to the potty?" I'm like, "Don't judge me.
Yeah. Right. Don't judge this. Don't judge what's going on here. It's a lot.
You don't know what I'm going through."
Right. Right.
All right, country boy, where would you like to be found on the internet?
Wow. You can find me on Instagram at @1mic_history. You can find me on Twitter at @1michistory. You can find me on the interwebs at onemichistory.com. This is where I host all of my content. You can find all of my old episodes. You can also find all of my YouTube videos, some blog posts that I've made. I'm gonna start trying to expand that. But yeah, One Mic History is where I want to be found.
Do you prefer Country Boy or do you prefer Michael? You prefer your government or you prefer your nickname?
Wow. I mean, Countryboi's fine. In these podcasting spaces is so weird. Me and Devin Cox had a discussion about, whether or not I should even go by Country Boy anymore, considering when you start getting to more professional spaces, considering what I do with the history podcasting, I end up in professional spaces. And some places, Country Boy does not really fit. So they'll ask, they were like, do you want to be going by Country Boy? And I know what that means. That is code switching for, do your black ass really want to go? This is really the name you want for these people to hear. So I'm like, yeah, now you can call me Michael. Michael's fine. But I still embrace Country Boy because I'm still that kid. I'm still that kid playing SOCOM and what was that, like 2000? Yeah.
Oh my goodness.
I know I'm dating myself right now.
Boy, goodness. Whew. All right. I'm okay now. All right, we'll go with Michael then. Okay. All righty. And the reason I asked that is because I wanted to ask this.
Mm-hmm.
Michael, are you ready to answer the 6 questions?
Yes. Let's go.
Question number 1. When did you know you wanted to get into podcasting?
And podcasting, man, 2 years, 3 years is like forever in podcasting. But it was like 2018, and I was at a mutual friend's house, and he had a podcast. Even before I even knew, I was familiar, but I didn't know anybody with one. And he was like, yo, you want to get on it? And we went outside to the deck and started podcasting. I had a mic. We talked about it. It was basically a roundtable discussion. We were just shooting the shit, talking about whatever topics. And I was like, yo, this is dope. I think it was Campbellism Podcast. It was 2 brothers from Mississippi. No disrespect to them. But later on, I listened to some of the other episodes and I was like, yo, we made their podcast better than what it was. So why don't we just do our own thing? So me and the other people who was there all got together and created the cut, So after doing the cut for a while, I was like, yo, this is dope. I like this, but I feel like we could do more. This idea came from a monetary standpoint at first. I love history. I enjoy it, but I also thought that if I started doing a Black history podcast for Black people created by a Black person, that I could make money also, that there could be some monetary money made from this. But I also have a passion for it. So I was like, you know what? I'm going to start creating a Black history podcast. And I think this is going to be dope. And I think there's a message. There's a space for this. So at that point, I was like, yo, I'm going to do this. This is what I want to do. And it's going to be amazing. And it's been a fun ride, man. I've learned a lot. And I hope a lot of my listeners have learned with me.
As a listener, I will say yes. Yes, I have.
Thank you.
One thing I like about your show is you've done your research, which is obvious, but there's also the way you stick like country boyisms is the only thing I can say in the middle of it to so it's not like a dry history reading. Like The one that makes me laugh, it still tickles me, is when you were talking about the Negro baseball leagues, and there was a team that said they were Cuban. I can't remember,
Yeah,
and you
yeah.
called them. They said, and you said, you said they were as Cuban as chitlins, and I lost it.
And they were. And that was a good episode. I enjoyed that episode a lot because the way that works is that came from a place of racism. They couldn't get into these ballparks, and being Cuban got them in the door. I think some other ball players ended up telling people that they were, no, it was another guy, Bill Pickett, who used to do rodeos, and he was barred from some rodeo because he was black, and he ended up telling people that he was Native American, and that got him in place. And I was like, do you not understand the weird dichotomy that you bar black people, but you'll let a dark-skinned Indian dude in here? That doesn't make sense. That or a Cuban guy in here who's obviously coming African American. I mean, some African origins. Whatever. I get it, but I don't get it.
Racism is stupid.
It is stupid.
Yeah, I mean, it's stupid.
It is stupid. It is stupid, and it doesn't. It's not for logic. It's not meant to have logic.
It's a man-made construct, and it's silly.
Yeah, it's very silly. It's very silly, and that, the Cuban Giants was silly. It was silly. It almost shed light on how silly racism was.
Mm-hmm. Absolutely. What was your favorite episode to research and record?
Oh, wow. I got asked this the other day, and it's so tough. I think my favorite of my most recent episodes was probably Henrietta Lacks. Her story comes from a face of tragedy, but she was able to, so many medical advances came from her cells that it's just, it's hard to feel bad about the story when so many things led to were invented or created from her cells. I mean, in the story, I talk about virology. The idea that we have people who study viruses is 100% because of Henrietta Lacks' cells, because they could take her cells and inject her cells with viruses and then use those viruses to study how they would react to change the cells, and that would in turn give them an idea of how it will react in the human body. You know what I'm saying? And you just couldn't get that any other way. It's just not possible any other way. And because her cells were immortally growing, when you kill one of them, you could just go right back to your supply and start all over again. So I just love the story of Henrietta Lacks. I have to remind myself is that, when you have these stories like the, Tuskegee experiment and Henrietta Lacks, it's all about choice. Like, you need to make people aware of the choices, and informed consent when she died didn't exist. It didn't exist medically. There was not a medical thing. And the same thing with the Tuskegee experiment. Informed consent didn't exist. But at least in the Tuskegee experiment, when it did exist, they still didn't inform those men. So, while there's a lot of misconceptions about both of these things, I think we need to focus on the fact that it's about choice, and it's always been about choice and making people aware of the choices that are available to them. So yeah, Henrietta Lacks is my favorite.
Question number 2. What do you wish you had known when you had started out?
Oh my God, man. There's so many things. One, when I first started out, I thought this was but it was a pathway for success. All I got to do is I'm funny, and people are just going to find me funny. This is mostly talking about the cut. As soon as I get this out here in the world, they're going to see this and see how funny I am and how funny my crew is, and we're going to be rich beyond our wildest dream. We're going to be Joe Rogan in this month, right? And it just ain't that way. It ain't that way. And one thing I found, and I tell this to people, it is very difficult to build an audience when you're only selling your personality. It's hard to build an audience when you're only selling your personality. If you already have an established audience, you can bring them back with your personality and how great you are, how funny you are, and they'll stick by you. But to build an audience based solely off your personality is difficult. And once again, this is how I ended up, starting One Mic. Is I wanted to bring people more value. I wanted to give people more value than just me being funny or just something witty or us having an interesting topic to discuss. So number one is that it's hard out here, and you need to bring people value. That's number one. Number two is that editing sucks, and no one told me the editing was going to be this hard. Like, I was not aware of just how difficult editing was going to be, coming from a space where we weren't editing anything. And if we were editing anything, I was just cutting out one block of discussion because one of the people on my podcast said something wow. Something that's gonna get us in trouble. You know what I mean? Like, Beyonce sucks, something crazy. Like, no, don't do that. I'm cutting you out. Like, don't do that. Don't get us canceled or the bees sent to my front desk. So when you go from that to a scripted podcast where you are reading off of a script and you make mistakes and you have to do that over, it takes hours and hours and hours to get that stuff right. And it's just difficult. And I had no idea it was going to be this difficult. And I also had no idea about adding music, because even now I'm still just basically just me and my voice. But if you listen to some of the larger, more established, I listen to 1619 Project. She has sound effects and music, and I don't know nothing about that. Don't know nothing about it. I try, but it's a process. And I'm, once again, like me and my history, me and editing, y'all learning with me. This is a project. It's a project. It's a project and a process.
Absolutely. I think most podcasters agree with you that editing sucks, except for Dan Felton, who likes it for some reason.
Man, Dan is weird. Dan is weird. I promise you, one day I'm just going to pay Dan to do my stuff. When I can make enough money, I'm like, Dan, here is my podcast, my unedited raw here. Good luck, man. Don't drown.
I'll see you when you get back.
Right. I'll see you when you get back. Just let me know when it's done. I told him when I get big time, man, I'm gonna just bring you on staff. I'm just bring Dan on staff.
What is your favorite part about podcasting?
This talking, the creation part, and not so much with One Mic, because even the creation process is difficult because it's something about reading for 20 or 30 minutes, and I'll get 30 minutes in and turn into mush mouth, and it's just like and I can't talk, and I'm trying to get through it, and it's just a struggle. It's just a struggle. So when I'm doing interviews like this and opportunities like this, where people ask me things and I get to, talk about my podcast or talk about interesting moments from history, these are the parts that I love. Like, I wish podcasting was more this and less all of the work it takes in the creation process. Also, funny story, since we talking about Dan briefly, and I told him this, he's the reason why I started One Mic. Dan did an episode on the Tulsa Race Massacre of 1921. And I remember listening to it and thinking, yo, this is dope. This is really dope. I want to do this. I want to do this, what you're doing right here. I want to create this. And I didn't know if I could do it that well, but I wanted to do it. I wanted to create this. And he inspired me to do it. And on the flip side of that, I also felt, and this is no shot against him because Dan's my homie, I felt like this should be a story told by someone of African American descent. You know what I'm saying? And that's not a tall, it's okay that he did it. He did a great job. But I also felt like this story and these stories should be done by somebody Black. And hey, who better than me?
I'm glad you did it.
Dan's funny. He's a funny dude because he does well-researched topics. Like, he did an episode on Amazon, and I think he's doing one on NFTs, and he's doing one on coming up about Birds Don't Matter, which is about disinformation. And I'm like, yo, I see channels on YouTube just like what you're doing right now, and they have hundreds and thousands of followers. If you would take your audio content and make it just that, even the smallest video, even if it's just Ken Burns and you just got pictures and you scrolling through pictures, you could be rich. Like, you don't have to live like this. This is why I want to bring him on staff, because I can see the potential in what you're doing. And all I got to do is help you create videos that reflect that. And we're going to be rich. We both going to be rich.
I love it. Remember us little people. even if it's just a wave, like, oh, I remember you. Yeah.
Plug the show. Come on.
Perfect. Perfect. Question number 3. What's your go-to order at your favorite hometown restaurant?
Oh, wow. It is this place. I haven't been there a while since COVID, but it's this amazing place. They do Tex-Mex. It's called Tacos, and Tequila. And pre-COVID, we were at this place once or twice a month. I mean, to the point where they recognized us. Like, hey, how you doing? You back? You absolutely. I would go and order 3 Gringo beef tacos. That's their name for the ground beef tacos. And it's honestly, the funny part about it is I didn't know why they were called the Gringo beef until I went to an authentic Mexican restaurant and realized and found out that they don't really do ground beef tacos. They don't really do ground beef tacos. So, you know, at Tacos, and Tequila, that's a play on that this is what the gringos eat. I got it. And the lady looked at me. I was like, yo, let me get some, a couple ground beef tacos. And she looked at me like I grew a third head. She's like, okay, what is this? What are you talking about? We don't do that. You want the carne asada. So yeah, that's my go-to. I love it. They don't travel well, so I haven't eaten it in a while. But if we were to go today, I would still be like, oh yeah, it's like old times.
Do you go with your family, or do you go with the boys, or you just go whenever?
Man, and this is different because when we used to go, this was pre my son. This is pre Braden. And he's 2 now, and he's never been to a restaurant. So I don't know what going to a restaurant is going to be like in 2022 and beyond. But back in the day when it would be me and my wife, we would typically go on a Friday or Saturday, and it was just a go-to spot. Like, we would end up there at least once or twice a month, just because we knew we were going to get, we knew we were going to enjoy it. I could make reservations. I would make a reservation on Open Table, and Open Table was like easy peasy. Like, 7:30, because it got crowded. They got to the point where it was really crowded. I was like, I'm not gonna have these problems. I'm gonna reserve me a table. We're gonna sit down and eat. Okay, how many people in here?
Question number 4. What are you curious about?
Wow. I mean, aside of history and understanding how things, how history interlocks, because it's not just about learning about a story. It's more understanding how one story changed the mindset that set up another story, So like how the death of Emmett Till sparked the civil rights movement. Like, these things, that's super interesting to me. But another thing, since everybody knows about the freaking history, I really am interested in things that people can't explain. Like, typically I would say the paranormal, but I don't really like to say the paranormal because it's not just, freaking ghosts and UFOs. It's more like when things happen that defy logic and I can't explain how that happened or why that exists. I like to listen to like creepypasta, or one of my favorite YouTube channels, and granted, is everybody's favorite now, is Mr. Ballin. Because Mr. Ballin is an amazing storyteller, and he tells stories that are right up my alley about people that were missing in the woods, and they were standing right next to him, and they turned around and Bobby was gone. I was like, yo, this stuff, I love this stuff. I eat it up, man. I can watch this for hours. And that kind of thing just makes me curious. I spend time just sitting here thinking about what happened to that person? What are some logical reasons? What, was he picked up by a bird? Did someone waiting in the woods to snatch up little Bobby and, take him 5 miles away where he was found on top of a hill? I don't know, but that stuff interests me.
What are some of your favorite podcasts?
Some of my homies that I love is, I'm big on OTR podcasts. Of course, I'm big on Dan Felton. Some of the ones that I listen to, some of the larger ones, is I really like Henry Louis Gates' History in 3 minutes or so. And granted, it's really short, but they're so well done that it's hard not to be appreciative of, even though it's only 3 minutes, of how well done history that he gives these 3 minutes. Another good one is the 1619 Project. Nicole Hannah-Jones did an amazing job with this, and it's a quick listen too. It's only like 7 episodes, but it's like 7 episodes of heat, 7 episodes of fire. Black History Buff does this amazing episode about the Little Rock Nine, and once again, this is somebody that I listened to, that inspired me to create, because I listened to his episodes and I'm like, this is so well done. It's not just you delivering the history or the news. It's more about giving you a feeling, or like you being transported into that time period and feeling what the Little Rock Nine felt when they were trying to test the 1954 Brown versus Board of Education ruling. You know what I'm saying? So you listen to it and you're like, wow, I feel like I was there. And he even has an interview in there where he talks to Elizabeth Eckford, who was one of the Little Rock Nine. He doesn't talk to her, but he has an excerpt of an interview she's done. She talks about what it felt like that day and being turned away, and how people were following them, screaming out, N-word this, and she had to ride the bus home because she couldn't get into school because the governor had called the National Guard to keep the Little Rock Nine from coming to school that day. And it's like, you listen to it and you're like, these kids were 16, 17 years old, and all they wanted to do was go to school and learn, and hundreds of people showed up to stop them. They called the National Guard. You listen to it and you're like, wow, this is amazing. This just listen to it. It's awesome.
Another example of how racism is silly.
Yes, exactly. Another example of how racism is silly. But once again, you get, the stories that spark a movement, because you listen to this, and this resistance and this fight to integrate these schools is also what led to the further push from the civil rights movement, because they saw that it wasn't going to be easy. It was never going to be easy. And you got to keep fighting, and like I said in the interview the other day, the entire fight, it's a fight. It's about perseverance, and our ancestors persevered, and we continue to persevere today. But also, perseverance is a story for everybody. Everybody can learn from a story of fighting the good fight and continuing to work and just hope, keeping hope, infinite hope.
Question number 5. What should I ask you that I didn't know enough to ask?
One thing about, especially doing one mic, is I never get to display, my opinions or what I think about stuff. And I just, want people to know that I'm, I consider myself to be well-rounded, kind of a bit of a Renaissance man. Like, yes, I like history, and yes, I consider myself to be a bit of an intellectual, but I also like to think that I can also talk about everything else, from sports. If you want to talk about sports, we can talk about sports. You want to talk about comic books or sci-fi or whatever passes through your head, I love to talk about it all. It's not just about history. You have these, these interviews. Typically what happens on a lot of these interviews, especially recently, is that all I do is talk about history. And while I love it, sometimes I just want people to ask me like, hey, Mike, what did you think about Eternals? What did you think about, the last issue of Thor? Like, I never get to talk about nerd stuff. You know what I mean? And I would love, just one day just to talk about nerd stuff, or someone just to invite me so we could talk about nerd stuff. I'm a big old nerd, and I consider myself to be well-rounded, and I can talk about more than just history.
Speaking of nerd stuff, have you ever been to a Comic-Con?
No, and I would love to go, but let me say this: I would love to go to a Comic-Con, but when I grew up, my entire life, I grew up, I was a weird kid. I was a weird kid. They used to call me White Mike when I was in school because, yeah. I got used to it. It's okay. You know, hey, whatever. I'm not gangster. I grew up middle class. What do you want? I felt like once again that made me well rounded. Two, I thought I was weird. I thought I was a weird kid. And then I get on Black Twitter or social media and I realize on a scale of 1 to 10, I'm not even a 5 in the terms of weirdness. I am not, I don't even meet the bar, because like, people in their in-depth love of anime and cosplay, and I'm like, I don't know what's happening. I don't know what you guys are doing. Like my idea of cosplay is like buying an Iron Man helmet and putting that on and in the house. Like that's about as cosplay as I get. And going to a Comic-Con and seeing people in full cosplay, it's just like my mind just doesn't, like, what are you doing? You're a grown ass man. And I'm not judging. I'm just saying it just doesn't, like, I don't understand. It's not, and everything's not for everybody. That said, I would love to go to one. I think I'll make that post-COVID. One of my missions is to go to a Comic-Con and hang out. I would love to go one with like a good panel where I could go watch, somebody talk about one of my favorite movies. That'd be awesome.
Here is how I look at Comic Con, and this might help. I'm not spooked by any of that stuff. I'll explain why. I am a big fan of watching people who love something so much. Like
Yeah.
that, genuinely brings me joy when I see someone dressed who has made their costume. I have a coworker who is like this. He's big into Star Wars. He's not only is he into Star Wars, he's really into the Mandalorian subculture around Star Wars. And so he's made himself. I think he went as Boba Fett one year. Then he's made like his own, like it's almost like an original character Mandalorian. One year I showed him this picture that it was Boba Fett was catching them all. He had a bunch of Pokeballs, and and that's what he went for that Comic Con that he went to. Like I just enjoy watching people who love what they do and are good at it.
Yes.
You know what I mean?
Yes. Yeah. I did. And to that point, I do appreciate the costumes that are like, holy crap, how many hours? How many hours did you put into this? Um once again, another thing I like to watch is like people building things.
Mm-hmm.
And one of the videos I have watched is people building their costumes, where I might not, really enjoy watching you in your costume, but the act of you watching you create it, like, wow, this is just a skill. This is awesome. The hours you put into this. I watched a lady create, I can't remember that game, Horizon Zero Dawn, whatever the main character is in that Horizon Zero Dawn game. She went as that. That's stuff when she dressed up. And I was like, oh, that's not easy at all. I mean, because it's almost like a caveman outfit made like a sheepskin with like fur around. I was like, and she looked just like him. Like, I'm impressed. I'm really impressed with your level of detail and your commitment to this. You didn't just go to a store and buy, hey, can I buy this Mandalorian armor that you have on the wall?
I'm gonna put over another guest. Kimmy Hughes is a cosplayer amongst other things. She's a nerd Renaissance woman. She built a costume that actually she built a alternate universe, I think is what it was, Big Barda costume, and DC used that costume for other things.
Wow.
Like that's
really
yeah, it's
that's dope.
It's incredible. Like
that's dope.
Yeah, it's awesome, and I am so grateful that my kids want to go every single time that we can. When your little man's old enough and he gets to seeing that stuff, man, there's nothing like it.
I really enjoy seeing the little kids too, especially that representation, because one of the big things now is Miles Morales, and I just love the fact that Miles Morales exists. You know what I mean? That there's this is little teenage kid Spider-Man in this world, and while he's Afro Latino, when you see him, he looks black. It's pretty much like a little black kid in my mind. I'm like, it's a little black kid, and that kind of representation, that's awesome. Like, you need that. You need more of that in a world before social media, because this is what I grew up in, and I'm assuming you too.
Yep.
Is that only people you knew were the people you went to school with or inside your circle, and if you didn't know anyone like you just assumed it didn't exist.
Right. Right.
And then you got to social media, you're like, oh man, there's actually millions of us. There are millions of us.
Yes, sir. Yeah.
While I will read stuff about representation, and I do love representation, I also just love great stories. So,
absolutely.
Invincible, which I love. I read that before the show came out. I blazed through it. So when I saw they were getting a show for Amazon, I was like, yes. Yes.
I love it.
One of the things, because I don't read all the time. One of the things I like is self-enclosed stories that already have a beginning, middle, end. The story's been concluded. It was going somewhere. We finished it. I prefer that than reading. Oh yeah, wait till next month till the next issue comes out. Let me know when you're done.
Yeah, the long-running stories. I haven't read too many comics in the recent years, but I think they're going more towards self-contained stories now, which is great.
I prefer like either self-contained stories or one-offs or things that like, okay, this happened, we're doing this, and now it's over. You can stop reading. I think they have I've been reading The Last Ronin, which is about the Ninja Turtles, and basically only Raphael is left, and it chronicles how the other turtles died, as well as Master Splinter, and what Raphael is doing to avenge them. So it's told from his point of view, and then it does look backs on what happened to the other turtles, and it's just great. It's great. It's so great. I think it's Raphael. It might be Michael. It might be Michelangelo. No, yeah, it's Michelangelo. I think Michelangelo was the smallest of the group, and now he's like a tank because apparently they get larger. The longer they live, they get bigger and bigger and bigger. It's weird. Anyway, yeah, read it. Check it out. It's good.
Question number 6. If you could create a new holiday, what would it commemorate?
Wow. I struggle with this also. I'm always thinking about history and people who haven't gotten their just due. And while you thought about like a Fred Hampton Day, which he does have a day in Chicago, or a Malcolm X, I settled on Ida B. Wells on Ida B. Wells Day just because her contribution to African Americans goes unsung just constantly. Like, people just can constantly forget about the contributions of Ida B. Wells. And when she was alive, she fought, she rallied against lynching. I mean, to the point where, because she used to live in Memphis, to the point where she went on vacation to Chicago and wrote an article that got published, and they destroyed her office and basically told her that she can never come back to Memphis again, or they will lynch her. And she never came back. These are the kind of stories that she was writing about, chronicling about lynching and the plight of African Americans and its old misconceptions that African American men rape white women, that they lust after white women, they can't control themselves. So therefore, we should kill them or lynch them before they even get a chance. But she also was big on women's suffrage, and she fought for the right for Black women to vote. And, after the 15th Amendment, it enfranchised African Americans. And then, of course, after Black codes, they slowly took away their right, Black people's right to vote in the South. But this entire time, she was fighting for not just Black men, but Black women's right to vote, not because she was this huge champion for women's rights, and she was, but it was more because she wanted us to all be able to vote so we all could have a united voting bloc and get things passed that for the Black agenda that would benefit our community. And when you think about it, it was way beyond our time. Like, we're still talking about those concepts today. one of the interesting facts about her is that after Frederick Douglass died in 1895, they were looking for a new leader for Black people. You know, who would be the spokesman for Black people? Ultimately ended up selling on Booker T. Washington, but they considered Ida B. Wells for a time because she was at the height of her prominence. She was writing articles about lynching, and people, she was as popular as she was ever going to be. And they were like, it should be her. And the only reason that she wasn't considered is because she was a woman. It's because the same misconceptions, like Shirley Chisholm says, I got more slack for being a woman than for being Black because men are men. And the same thing happened to her in 1895, that, you know, men are men. They weren't going to listen to a woman, even if she was a champion for our rights, for everybody's rights. So yeah, Ida B. Wells, she died in March 25th. So March 25th is Ida B. Wells Day.
This was an absolute blast. Thank you so much.
Thank you, man. Thank you for having me. This was dope. I really enjoyed this, and I got to talk about something else. I mean, I it's funny that I complained about not being able to talk about something else when this entire time I've been on this podcast, you've been letting me talk about everything else.
Thank you for tuning in once again to Damon Does. And if you could take just a quick second to dip on into where you downloaded this podcast app, where you get that sweet, sweet podcast action, and make sure you leave 5 stars, leave a review so more people can join the conversation. So, until next time, see it, hear it, speak it, live.